Hey everybody, my name is Reno Giovanetti and I am the instructional technologist here at College of the Redwoods. And today we're going to be talking about the assessment tools in Canvas, specifically quizzes. This is a three-part series, so there will be a part about assignments and a part about papers and so on. But why don't I go ahead and get out of the picture and we can get started.
Okay, that's much better. So, we're going to be talking about quizzes today, and we're going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of using the quiz tool. And we're going to talk about a little bit about how you're going to use that in Canvas. So, what are the advantages and disadvantages of implementing online quizzes in Canvas? One of the great things about quizzes is that they're easy to access and use by the students. They're automated in scoring. You don't have to score individual questions. You can have automated feedback, so you can have feedback for correct or incorrect answers already set to go. And because of all the automation involved, you can create a number of less high stakes assessments and spread them out over your course so that you can get a better idea of how your students are doing over time. So there are some disadvantages. They can be difficult to create from scratch. If you don't have access to publisher test banks, then you have to create them one question at a time, so there's some time involved. The other thing is student authenticity. So what can we do to make sure that students aren't cheating on their quizzes? Well, you won't be able to prevent it completely, but what you can do is you can use question banks and randomize the questions that each student gets so that no two students are getting the same quiz. You can randomize the order of the answers so that even if they do get the same question, the answers are not going to be in the same order. You can use timed quizzes, which can reduce the amount of time that it takes for a student to have to look up the answers online. You can also change your methodology for how you use the quizzes. Instead of having them as a high stakes grade determination tool, you can use them maybe as a method for students to self-assess or as a learning tool on its own. So we'll be taking a look at some of the options and features for Canvas quizzes. I've given you a link to a couple of videos here, one for creating quiz questions and the other about setting up the settings, and we'll be taking a look at how you create a quiz here in just a moment. Um, so if you create questions, you're going to have a number of options. And the first option is going to be what kind of question you're going to be able to put in. So there's multiple questions. You can have true, false, multiple choice, fill in the blank. And most of those questions will be graded automatically. You can also put in essay questions. You'll have to grade those individually. You can put in automated feedback for each of the questions and for each of the answers. You can also create graded or ungraded quizzes. So if you want to give practice quizzes, you can set those up as well. You can set the availability for a specific date and time, just as you would any other assignment. You can set the time that's allowed for the student and the number of attempts. I've also put a link in here that talks about how you give extra time to an individual student in your course if you need to. You can control if and when the correct answers will be displayed. If you don't want to have the students know what the correct answer was, you can hide that feedback and just tell them they got the question correct or not, or just give them their score. You can set random subsets of questions to appear on each attempt. So you can pull your questions from a question bank, or you can set up a number of questions so that each individual student will have a separate set of questions. So let's just take a real quick look here. We'll go to the good old Sandbox course and we'll look at quizzes, and we'll just take a quick look at what some of the options are and where they are. When you first go to create a quiz, you're going to end up with two tabs. There is a settings tab and a questions tab. First, you'll fill in the settings, and here you will have access to a description of the quiz. You can set what group, grade group it's going to show up with. Here's where you select, you can shuffle the answers, you can set a time limit and the number of attempts that you can put in there. And here is the section on feedback. So you can let students see which answer they had selected or not. You can let students see the correct answers. You can even put in a date so that they can only see the answers after everyone else has taken the quiz. You can select an option to show only one question at a time so that as they go through, they can't move back or forward through the other questions. You can also put up an access code. So if you need to, for example, have a quiz delivered in the testing center and you only want the students to have access to it when they're with their proctor or in the testing center, you can require an access code and put in a password, and students won't be able to access the quiz without that password. And of course, the rest of the options, the due date and who the assignment is assigned to, are the same as for any other assignment in Canvas. If we go back to the questions, when you click on the questions, you'll have the option of finding existing questions that you've already created, or creating a new group of questions that you can select a certain number, or just create a plain old ordinary new question. If you go into new questions, you can use the drop down box at the top here, and here are all the different types of questions that you can put into a Canvas quiz. You can see there's a number of them here, matching and multiple drop downs, essay questions. Remember, if you include essay questions, you're going to have to grade those individually. They won't be graded automatically. Here is where you put in the question, you put in the answers, and you'll notice these little boxes here are for putting in feedback. Make sure that you update your question and that you save the whole quiz. Otherwise, you'll lose either part of your quiz or part of the answer. Another option for Canvas quizzes are to create question banks. Question banks and quizzes are essentially the same thing, and in fact, when you create a question in Canvas, it will automatically be put into a question bank. So you can get question banks from publishers, and you can import those into Canvas, and then you can then use those question banks to create quizzes, or you can create your questions one at a time. So I've given you a link here to documentation about creating a question bank, but let's just take a quick look here. If you go to the quizzes tool and you look over here on the right, you're going to have a drop down menu, and the only option in that drop down menu is to manage question banks. You may not have noticed it before, but if you have quizzes in Canvas, then you do have question banks. When you go to the question banks, and in this particular case, I've got some question banks that were imported from a publisher. And if you go down here to the bottom, you'll see that there's an unfiled questions question bank. Each time you create a new question in a quiz in Canvas, it adds it to this unfiled question bank. So you may have this unfiled question bank already and not know that it was there. It allows you to search for and find those questions and add them to quizzes, or you can break these up and put them into question banks. If you look at this unfiled questions, it should be a list of all of the questions that you've already created in there. You'll notice that when you go in to edit a question, you have to come to the right here and click on the little pencil icon to edit it. And then you can come in and change the options. You could change the type of question, or the answers. Make sure that you have clicked on the arrow here to set the correct answer for the question. If you want to leave feedback based on the answer, you can click on the little box here. You could put in feedback for incorrect answers, for the correct answer, general overall, not associated with any of the specific answers that a student has chosen, or just a general comment about the question. So you can put in plenty of feedback when you do your questions. And question banks can be very useful when you go in and you create a new question uh, and you are a new quiz and you want to base that on a question bank, all you need to do is add a quiz group. So if I go to questions, I can add a new question group, and it will allow me to link to an existing question bank. And I can select a particular question bank, and then I can say choose 10 questions out of that question bank, and I can make them each worth 10 points. And that's all there really is to it.